Hello, I'm Matt Reardon, and thanks for watching this July 19th West Weather Update brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. There are a few events that have just happened in the last week weather-wise, I think worth covering. The first of which certainly is the big heat wave that impacted the Southwest, California, really even areas beyond that. Just the whole western region saw warmer temperatures. There are very few areas that missed out on what I would call above average temperatures this past weekend. The warmest of which had to be Death Valley in California, no question. The Furnace Creek Station, which probably the most appropriately named creek in the United States, topped out at 128 degrees Fahrenheit. That is what we're looking at here. This is from Sunday midday. You can see temperatures kind of warming up top to bottom throughout the day here, peaking around midday at 128 degrees Fahrenheit. Just very hot temperatures in Death Valley and areas beyond that. Now, last week we mentioned the possibility that Death Valley could reach close to that global record maximum temperature, anywhere on the globe recorded kind of in modern history here. That's at 134 degrees Fahrenheit, so we didn't quite reach kind of that magnitude, but nonetheless, 128 degrees Fahrenheit, still very hot. That did reach a daily record for that station there, so the hottest day on record for July 16th, for one of the hottest locations in the world, so just kind of showing the magnitude of the heat wave there. The other big weather event really kind of taking place this morning overnight, even just last night as well, was Tropical Storm Calvin. Now, a week ago, we were looking at Tropical Storm Calvin. It was organizing. I mentioned that it was probably nearing hurricane strength and could reach Category 1 strength, and it actually went beyond even that forecast. Shortly after I recorded the video, it was declared a Category 1 hurricane from the National Hurricane Center, and then later, into the next day or two, reached major status, so Category 3 strength plus. So a very powerful storm developing in the Eastern Pacific. Fortunately, when it was reaching that strong magnitude, it was well away from land. And then it crossed into those colder ocean temperatures that we talked about, and it started to weaken. But it reached such kind of a peak strength that even as it weakened, it still retained a lot of the wind field, that kind of spiraling wind around these systems, and still retained a lot of tropical moisture that it had pulled up from the rich tropical Pacific. Now, this is looking at it here this morning just south of Hawaii. It's even kind of hard to see the state of Hawaii here, kind of wrapped in these clouds and thunderstorms and the showers here. But it is kind of looking like a shell of its former self here. You can actually see what we call the exposed circulation. And what I mean by that is you can see all the way down here into the Pacific Ocean surface between the clouds here, not typical of even a normal tropical storm. So still packing enough winds here as of today to retain that tropical storm strength status. I thought it would weaken a bit further to that at this point here on Wednesday, but it has overperformed a bit. And then even kind of an implication here is as these storms move in their forward motion, this storm specifically moving from the east toward the west at a pretty rapid clip. Does not look like that on this video here, but that can increase the strength of the winds on that north side. So these winds already spiral around in this kind of counterclockwise direction. So if you add forward speed to that, you're only kind of adding on to those winds, and Hawaii is feeling the brunt of that here today with some strong winds, strong rainfall, even some thunderstorms moving into the state here. The Big Island feeling the brunt of that. If I pull back big picture across the whole Central Pacific, it's really kind of hard to see just this little spiraling storm here tracking to the east through east toward the west, just south of Hawaii here, but nonetheless impacting the state. And they don't get a lot of these tropical systems, so it always is kind of fascinating when they get this close to Hawaii. If we look at some of the radar imagery, this one from the Big Island, seeing the rain slowly wane here, this storm expecting to kind of get out of the area here overnight tonight, certainly into Thursday, weakening. But as we jump across the Big Island of Hawaii into Maui, Molokai, Lanai, even out into Oahu, they're now seeing a lot of the rainfall from the system, some of the stronger winds as well, high surf. Certainly, and the Big Island got its share of rain and wind overnight and into early this morning. Look at the National Weather Service advisories out and valid for the state here today. Tropical storm warnings actually for the Big Island being closer proximity to that system moving just to the south of the state. But high wind warnings for Maui, Molokai, Lanai, Oahu, seeing high surf warnings, gale warnings, things of that nature. This is lighting up the board, so to speak, here with a tropical storm moving so close to the state here. And we're not out of the woods. National Hurricane Center, just looking at the Eastern Pacific, I mean, we're right getting into the heart of our hurricane season here in the Pacific. We're talking late July, getting into August here. So not a surprise that there's more area of interest here. This one has a 40 to 60% chance of developing over the next 7 days. Taking a closer look at the satellite imagery here, just in the Eastern Pacific. That area here, not the strongest visual representation, I would say, in terms of looking for some imminent development. We can see some thunderstorm activity certainly here in the Eastern Pacific. Nothing too what I would call organized or kind of coalescing here. You can't really even make out a broad counterclockwise spin yet, but we'll give this some time. We'll see where these thunderstorms go. The expectation right now is we're going to have some sort of weak development here over the next 5 days or so. Give you an example of what this might look like on the ECMWF forecast. I'll make this valid here as of Wednesday evening. We do have this kind of weak system here trying to spin up here on the ECMWF. And as we take this through the next few days, this now into Friday, into Saturday, still kind of have a system here spinning up, potentially tropical storm strength, but nothing that shows me it would be stronger than that, getting in. Certainly not a major Category 3 hurricane or anything of that nature. So I can understand that kind of 40 to 60% chance of development from the National Hurricane Center. Out of curiosity, I'll take a peek at the GFS here. We'll make that valid as of Wednesday evening here, and we can see again that kind of broad area of rotation as I take this through the next few days. The GFS developing something a little bit more highlighted here, signifying more bona fide tropical storm development, maybe even a little bit beyond that, getting closer to hurricane strength, but weakening quickly as we get into the weekend. Now, the reason for the weakening, that's hard to say here. The reason for the weakening, you can kind of draw a line from Cabo toward the Central Pacific. The areas to the southeast of that, this water is very warm. We've seen a lot of tropical development come out of the Eastern Pacific because of that. But as it crosses that line into the colder ocean water in the Central Pacific, these storms have weakened very quickly. Now, Calvin was kind of an exception. It was strengthening right as it hit that wall, if you will, and was able to accelerate some strengthening just beyond that before quickly weakening thereafter. But the reason I bring this storm up, it would be potential tropical storm Dora, I believe. The one after that might be Eugene. And if I take this forward, you'll notice what's ever left of the system, maybe similar to what Calvin, the same kind of development we saw, is getting pretty close to Hawaii. Hawaii being kind of just off this map here, near 20 degrees north latitude, a bit further kind of over to the side of the screen here. But anything that kind of makes its way over here, even as a weaker system, just like we saw with Calvin, still could have implications in terms of high surf, wind warnings, and then the biggest thing being rainfall for the state of Hawaii. Now, just last video, or maybe the one before, we were talking about the state of Hawaii having drought risk, kind of going through late summer here, getting into fall, and maybe even parts of winter as a result of El Nino. So anyway, we can kind of sneak in these rainfall events, even unfortunately if it comes through these kind of inclement big system, which can cause a lot of other more immediate near-term issues. That kind of improvement to the water situation is still something we want to note. Getting back a little bit closer seaside here in terms of the western United States, the excessive heat watches have returned. Now, this one is coming out here in the San Joaquin Valley of California into the counties just south of that. We do have excessive heat warnings persisting in the lower Colorado River Valley, parts of Southern California, central and southern Arizona. This is kind of an extension of the heat wave we saw this weekend, whereas this darker color here is an excessive heat watch for what's expected to be rising temperatures going through the next 3 to 4 days here, and we'll take a look at that in the forecast. We do have a red flag warning here and some air quality issues where a wildfire is burning in southwest Oregon. We'll talk about that a little bit here at the end of the video. I did want to talk about temperatures very quickly here. I'll make this valid as a Wednesday. There's the very warm temperatures across the lower Colorado River Valley, prompting those excessive heat warnings here mid to late July. As I take this through Thursday, then into Friday, we see those temperatures warming up in the Central Valley. The reason for those excessive heat watches being posted there, temperatures exceeding 100 degrees Fahrenheit, really kind of pushing above the 105 degree Fahrenheit threshold in throughout the whole Central Valley. So expecting excessive heat watches, potentially some warnings returning to the Central Valley there, and even up and beyond that. Getting into the Willamette Valley, we're talking high 80s, eastern Washington getting close to the triple digits, probably surpassing that in the Snake River Valley. So a warm weekend coming again for the West, perhaps not quite to the same magnitude we saw last weekend, but nonetheless here, coming in mid to late July, these temperatures can get very warm. Saturday, getting into Sunday, temperatures moderating just a little bit and even further as we get into Monday, into Tuesday. Certainly for parts of the Pacific Northwest, temperatures coming down a bit. We were talking about triple digits a few days before this, now getting down toward 90 degrees or even high 80s in eastern Washington and getting below triple digits in the Snake River Valley here, Central Valley getting below triple digits as well, save for parts of the San Joaquin Valley. So some relief coming right next week. It's hard to say the word relief when we're still forecasting 100 degree Fahrenheit temperatures for areas in southern Central Valley, but nonetheless not seeing those extreme triple digit temperatures as we get into next week. The reasoning for that shift is really, as it often is, related to that upper level height pattern in those upper level ridges, which we keep so close track of. I'll make this forecast valid as a Wednesday evening here. Right now we have this kind of diffuse upper level ridge, which is sitting over Arizona, really extending all the way toward Texas, coming back around towards Southern California. So this is keeping those high temperatures around parts of Arizona and New Mexico. And as I take this forecast into Thursday, now into Friday, you'll notice that ridge kind of amplifying through the weekend, focused more now on Nevada, parts of California, and Utah. Make this valid kind of Saturday, maybe the hottest day in the forecast here, Friday into Saturday. That ridge more centered over the Central Valley of California, Nevada, and Utah. You can even see one more height layer here near Arizona. And this is really kind of building the heat back into this area versus that kind of diffuse ridge that we're left with here as of Wednesday evening. So keeping an eye on this ridge developing into this weekend, hot temperatures returning. We talked about those triple digits all the way up into eastern Washington and the Snake River Valley. It's because the axis of that ridge, kind of the apex going north, is really right through that geography there. So not a surprise to see the high temperatures peaking up there as well. But you'll notice as they walk this through Monday into Tuesday, that ridge exiting just east a bit, now more centered over the Four Corners, maybe even Colorado and central New Mexico here. So expecting the warmer temperatures to exit a little bit toward the east as a result of that. You follow the ridge axis, you follow those warmer temperatures most often. Still seeing some upper level height anomalies here through parts of California and Nevada, so not expecting a huge cool down, which is why I kind of tempered it with the word relief earlier. So still looking at temperatures near triple digits in the Central Valley and some of these geographies here. But the Pacific Northwest, this upper level trough sneaking into the area. Not the most potent upper level trough here in July, but nonetheless going to bring temperatures down for parts of the Willamette Valley and Washington here as that moves in kind of Monday into Tuesday of next week. Now, as we go out beyond that, there are some questions here in the long-range forecast. The biggest question I have right now, just kind of looking at and spitballing it with you here, we have seen this kind of rapid warm-up in temperatures in kind of the east to northeast Pacific, and that's really kind of this pocket here, this warm blob, if you will, just kind of off the coast of British Columbia, extending all the way kind of toward the northern side of Hawaii here. Now, as these temperatures have strengthened, we still have that negative PMM, or that Pacific Meridional Mode, really this cold patch of ocean waters here off the coast of California, the same cold patch of ocean waters that we've been talking about in terms of this blue wall, where these storms get kind of west of that line. Remember, we drew from Cabo. When they get west of there, they start to weaken. And it's not obvious to me how these are going to play together as we talk about the jet stream forecast going into the end of July here. My gut tells me that the jet stream will want to come up and over or be strengthened just to the north of these warmer ocean temperatures, potentially promoting some ridging out in the western U.S. But you also have this kind of offsetting colder ocean patch to the south of that, which may promote the subtropical jet stream coming around and doing something like this, pushing back up into the area, cooling temperatures down kind of in the Southern California, Nevada, Arizona area. Not dissimilar with what we talked about a little bit earlier this year. So some conflicting patterns here in the jet stream. I'll kind of walk you through where the jet stream forecast is right now, this valid as a Wednesday evening. We talked about that ridge developing in California and Nevada as we kind of go through the weekend. We see that here. If I kind of draw this ridge axis pushing up into the states here of Nevada, California, Utah, kind of nosing into the Snake River Valley in eastern Washington here. As I take this beyond this makes some sense to me in that warm ocean water is kind of right in through here, the jet stream trying to run along that and pushing that ridging into the western U.S. But then we also have this subtropical component, which is not unexpected in an El Nino year. And what I mean by that is look at this subtropical jet stream down here coming around that cold ocean water patch, pushing back up into parts of California and Nevada. Now that could help keep temperatures cooler somewhat in this area that I'm drawing here. It's not obvious to me which of these two kind of influences will win out right now. I think there's some uncertainty in the forecast, certainly into if we're going to see a repeat of another big heat wave in the Central Valley like we just experienced or like we're looking at this weekend, or if that ridge is more going to shift off to the east in the Four Corner states like we're seeing here in the forecast out early next week, bringing that a little bit of relief, right, to the parts of the Central Valley and the Pacific Northwest. If I take this forecast out through next week, we see that ridge, again, shifting even a little bit more to the east, kind of east of that Four Corners region, pushing heat more into the far high plains or the central plains here. Something of subtropical troughing now pushing into parts of California. And then that polar branch of the jet stream still kind of sneaking through here in the Pacific Northwest. This isn't a big heat signal for the western U.S. right now. So some conflicting signals here looking out into the long-range forecast. This is looking all the way out now toward next weekend. If we look out just at precipitation totals over the next 7 days, not terribly too much significant precip to talk about. We have seen this kind of slow start to the monsoon season. We thought we'd see some of that with all the heat building into the area. That's not a big surprise. Some kind of light precipitation from some of these elevation showers and storms now percolating in the interior west. That kind of extends through eastern Arizona, parts of New Mexico. But we're not seeing this kind of big explosion of the monsoon even into the lower river valleys or the lower elevations like we might see in a typical year as we get into late July. Give you an example of what that looks like. This is just looking at the monsoonal activity, maybe even today, this afternoon from the satellite imagery here. We saw some thunderstorms here going over central Nevada. And then the more afternoon kind of bubbling storms coming off the eastern edge of the Sierra Nevadas. We see those here in parts of central and eastern California or western Nevada here. And then the elevation storms coming up in eastern Arizona and parts of New Mexico. Right now, not expecting a lot of these to get into some of these lower elevation areas. It's always neat to look at the satellite imagery of these monsoonal thunderstorms, because if you look at the top of the clouds, they kind of paint that upper level ridge for us. And what I mean by that, if you look closely kind of at these upper level cloud fields, you can tell that these are being pushed off to the northeast here, kind of signifying that the upper level winds are moving in this direction. But we talked about that upper level ridge kind of centered over Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas. You can actually follow kind of these upper level winds blowing around that ridge here. And then on the underside of that ridge coming back towards Southern California. If you look at the thunderstorms here in southeastern Arizona, those thunderstorm tops and the clouds here being blown toward the west. So there's kind of painting that upper level ridge for us and telling us where these hot temperatures are likely to be. Speaking of the warm temperatures, if we just look at 7-day temperature anomalies heading out through the next 7 days or so out into Wednesday, July 26th, warmer across the board, really just starting off with that trough, or that ridge, I should say, centered over California, Nevada, that pushing off to the east. So these temperatures will come down a bit in this area as we push into next week, but still looking at a warmer temperature spread across the board over the region. If we try to forecast beyond that, there's kind of inclinations from the models have been that kind of Four Corners ridge is going to get a little bit more entrenched, I should say. This is looking at July 29th, so getting all the way into July now, and that Four Corners ridge still showing up here in the long-range ensemble forecast from the ECMWF. Now, a Four Corners ridge is actually kind of the average or expectation this time of year across the continental U.S. That is not an uncommon kind of late July, August pattern. So the models might just be flipping to that due to climatology. But nonetheless, given some of the kind of offsetting influence from what we talked about, the warmer ocean waters here off of British Columbia, Washington, and Oregon, and then the colder ocean waters further to the south of that, just don't have a lot of high confidence in what we're looking at here in terms of the forecast as we get into early August here. I will say I kind of expect the colder ocean waters again to kind of help reduce the chances of prolonged heat waves in the Central Valley or certainly the California coastline. But as that warm water builds in here, I would think that's increasing the chances for some prolonged or even high inclement heat getting into parts of the Pacific Northwest at times. We'll just have to keep an eye on this Four Corners ridge if it does develop. Might allow more of that monsoon to develop into the desert Southwest down here. I want to zoom in a little bit. I mentioned the red flag warnings in southwestern Oregon here. We do have a wildfire burning down in the far southwest area, actually blowing some smoke now over the Willamette Valley. You can see this kind of thin layer of smoke moving out over here, prompting some haze observations from some of the stations in here in Oregon. I will mention this is something of a slight concern as we go forward through the end of summer. This is an area that's drying out, certainly up through the Pacific Northwest. As we dry out, we get into some of these warmer temperatures in July and August. That's getting into the heart of the wildfire season. So probably not the last time we'll be talking about wildfires here as we go through the end of summer. This one being more isolated right now. Looking at the Climate Prediction Center, they are really kind of keying in on that Four Corners ridge here in terms of their above average temperature outlook. This is looking out into really the work week of next week. So July 24th through the 28th. There's that cool down expected in the Pacific Northwest as we get into next week as well. But still seeing warmer temperatures across the board. Maybe not a bona fide heat wave across the Central Valley of California or parts of the desert Southwest, but still very warm. When you couple that it's the end of July, the temperatures are going to be very elevated just from a kind of a where we're typically at anyway, given this time of year. If I take this out to the 8 to 14 day temperature outlook, the Climate Prediction Center, they're really kind of focused on that ridge moving more toward the Central Plains. Talked about that possibility when we looked at the jet stream earlier. That would potentially help get some more flow in here to help boost the monsoon. We see some of the reflection of that here, I think, in their forecast there. We talked about how the temperatures, maybe if we get that kind of subtropical component of the jet stream pushing into parts of California, Arizona here, could keep some of the temperatures down in this area, or at least not talking about excessive heat warnings here getting into the end of July, early August. Nonetheless, one to end with the fire potential outlook. This is from the National Interagency Fire Service, or Center, I should say. It's a .gov agency, kind of a combination of a number of different agencies that work together. The concern here is getting into the Pacific Northwest, an area that's drying out. We're seeing some potential drought development here just as of late. And so we are kind of keyed in on this area as we get into August, which is getting into the prime wildfire season here for the Pacific Northwest as we go into early fall. If I take you out to the monthly drought outlook, we actually see some drought development concerns in the Pacific Northwest, including parts of Washington, the Willamette Valley of Oregon. If I look at the seasonal outlook, now even including the state of Hawaii in terms of drought development, likely as a result of El Nino. So a few areas we're watching with drought development going into the fall here. Other than that, that's all I have for you all this evening. Thank you for watching.